Sunday, March 29th, 2026. Good evening. The strategic balance of power in the Middle East has suffered a profound and potentially irreversible fracture. Over the last 48 hours, the United States military has absorbed some of the most devastating material losses in modern combat history. Precision strikes executed by Iranian forces have successfully penetrated heavily fortified American defense perimeters across multiple nations, destroying highly classified, irreplaceable aviation assets and pushing the region to the absolute brink of a full-scale, multi-front ground war. The facade of impenetrable American air superiority has been shattered. The immediate crisis centers on a highly coordinated, multi-wave assault utilizing ballistic missiles and first-person view FPV drone swarms that struck the Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia. We now have confirmation regarding the extent of the damage, and the intelligence assessments are grim. The financial toll of destroyed equipment at this single installation has easily eclipsed $1 billion. But the strategic cost is far more severe. During the barrage, Iranian munitions struck and completely obliterated several KC-135 Stratotankers, the massive aerial refueling lifelines that allow American fighter jets and bombers to conduct long-range operations across the Persian Gulf. Far more devastating, however, was the confirmed destruction of an E-3G Sentry airborne early warning and control aircraft. Assigned to the U.S. Air Force's 552nd Air Control Wing out of Tinker Air Force Base, the E-3G is not merely a surveillance plane. It is the central nervous system of the American military operation. These aircraft function as airborne command posts, quarterbacking the entire battle space. They identify incoming threats, coordinate interceptor systems, and guide fighter squadrons to their targets. By successfully destroying the Sentry on the tarmac, Iran has effectively blinded a massive sector of the American air defense grid. Without these command planes, executing complex, synchronized warfare becomes nearly impossible. The human toll at Prince Sultan Air Base is also mounting. The Pentagon has confirmed that 12 American service members were injured in the blasts, with 2 soldiers listed in severely critical condition. Medical evacuation protocols are currently underway, navigating airspace that is actively contested. Simultaneously, the northern front of this conflict has erupted in violence. We have obtained verified footage of massive drone swarm impacts detonating across the city of Erbil in northern Iraq. These munitions directly targeted the United States consulate and the adjacent American military base. The situation in Iraq has devolved into a chaotic, two-front nightmare for deployed personnel. The Iranian military is actively coordinating with domestic Shiite militias, armed factions that have been granted official authorization by the sovereign Iraqi government to engage American forces. In retaliation, the U.S. military is conducting strikes against these Iraqi-aligned groups. The theater of war has completely engulfed Iraq, transforming it from a staging ground into an active, lethal battleground, where American troops are fighting forces loyal to the host nation. The lethal precision of these Iranian strikes has raised immediate, urgent alarms within Western intelligence agencies. Defense analysts universally agree that Iran does not natively possess the advanced satellite reconnaissance capabilities required to execute such pinpoint attacks on specific high-value assets like an E-3G Sentry parked among dozens of other aircraft. The prevailing intelligence indicates that Tehran is receiving direct, real-time targeting telemetry from the Russian Federation. This devastating intelligence sharing arrangement is unfolding against a backdrop of deep political contradiction in Washington. While American aviation assets burn in the Saudi desert due to Russian targeting data, the current administration has actively pursued a policy of appeasement toward Moscow. The White House continues to pressure European allies to lift economic sanctions on Russian oil exports. And just this past week, congressional leadership invited top officials from the Russian Duma to tour the United States Capitol to discuss bilateral economic cooperation. European heads of state are reportedly frantic, attempting to warn the administration that Moscow is actively facilitating the destruction of the American military arsenal in the Middle East. Yet those warnings appear to be entirely ignored by the executive branch. Instead of adapting to the glaring vulnerabilities of static air bases, the administration is preparing for a massive escalation. Military logistics networks are currently operating at maximum capacity, signaling the imminent initiation of a major ground offensive. The amphibious assault ship USS Tripoli has officially arrived in the Central Command area of operations, carrying specialized Marine expeditionary units. Furthermore, elements of the 82nd Airborne Division, the military's elite rapid deployment paratroopers, have touched down in the theater. Internal communications leaked from the Pentagon reveal that defense planners have drafted comprehensive blueprints for a ground invasion that could commence at any moment. Sources indicate these operations could last anywhere from a few weeks to several months. The primary objective is reportedly the seizure of Karg Island. Situated in the Persian Gulf, Karg Island is the beating heart of Iran's petroleum export economy. Any attempt to occupy the island would require a massive amphibious and airborne assault, exposing thousands of American infantrymen to intense ground fire, fortified artillery, and the exact same drone swarms that just dismantled the Air Force's regional fleet. Additional tactical blueprints involve aggressive coastal raids along the Strait of Hormuz to hunt down and eliminate anti-ship missile batteries. When confronted with these explosive leaks, the White House press secretary issued a carefully worded statement asserting that the Pentagon is merely fulfilling its duty to provide the commander-in-chief with maximum optionality, while declining to confirm whether the final order for a ground invasion had been signed. However, military families stateside have reported that Marine detachments are already receiving warning orders to prepare for full-scale mobilization. The economic shockwaves of this escalating conflict are already tearing through global markets. The price of Brent crude oil violently surged past $114 per barrel this morning, with commodities traders bracing for a spike toward $130 before the end of the week. The energy crisis is triggering drastic civil measures abroad. In Egypt, the government has declared a state of energy emergency. All retail shops and restaurants have been ordered to close by 9 p.m. on weekdays. Furthermore, Cairo has instituted a mandatory Sunday work-from-home policy for all non-essential sectors throughout the month of April in a desperate bid to conserve fuel and electricity. The industrial sector is also sustaining direct hits. In Bahrain, Iranian munitions struck the primary facilities of Aluminum Bahrain, one of the largest aluminum producers on the planet. Facility managers confirmed structural damage and injuries to 2 workers, further straining a global supply chain already reeling from disruptions in liquefied natural gas, fertilizer, and helium exports. This economic fragility is fundamentally tied to the freedom of maritime navigation, which is facing a renewed and dire threat. While the world focuses on the Persian Gulf, the situation in the Red Sea is rapidly deteriorating. The Houthi militant group, which controls vast swaths of Yemen and operates as a heavily armed proxy for Tehran, has issued a new ultimatum. Up to this point in the current escalation, Houthi forces have concentrated their ballistic missile fire toward Israel. This sustained bombardment has pushed the Israeli Defense Forces to their absolute limits, with High Command admitting that their interceptor stockpiles are dangerously low, placing their air defense umbrella on the cusp of a systemic breakdown. However, the Houthi leadership has now explicitly stated that if the United States directly intervenes in their operations or launches strikes against Yemeni territory, they will immediately pivot their arsenal back toward commercial shipping. Global logistics companies have not forgotten the crisis of 2 years ago, when Houthi anti-ship missiles halted 90% of commercial traffic through the Red Sea. If that maritime choke point is closed again while the Strait of Hormuz remains an active war zone, energy analysts predict the cost of crude oil could breach $200 per barrel, plunging the global economy into a severe depression. The diplomatic rhetoric emanating from the region reflects a deeply emboldened adversary. Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, the Speaker of the Iranian parliament, has taken to social media to openly mock the American executive branch. following statements from U.S. officials suggesting the war's objective was to ensure the Strait of Hormuz remained open. Galibaf publicly ridiculed the administration, pointing out that the strait was perfectly navigable before the United States initiated hostilities. This mockery is accompanied by terrifying threats directed at civilian institutions. Yesterday, coordinated strikes by U.S. and Israeli forces leveled the Iran University of Science and Technology in Tehran. This followed a previous allied strike on Iran's domestic steel industry infrastructure. In immediate retaliation, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, issued a chilling public directive. The IRGC declared that all American academic institutions operating in the Middle East are now classified as legitimate military targets. They have explicitly ordered all professors, students, and support staff to evacuate to a minimum distance of 1 kilometer from any American university campus in the region, promising immediate and severe retaliation. The humanitarian catastrophe underlying this geopolitical maneuvering is staggering. Health ministries inside Iran report that the death toll has now surpassed 3,461 individuals since the conflict erupted. Within that figure, they document the deaths of 1,551 civilians, including 236 children. Horrific imagery continues to flood international wire services, showing devastated residential neighborhoods and the bodies of toddlers pulled from the rubble of apartment complexes. Allied military command maintains that they are striking legitimate military targets intentionally embedded within civilian populations by the Iranian regime. However, human rights organizations continually point to the recent bombing of the Minab educational facility, which resulted in the deaths of 165 young girls, as evidence of a reckless and disproportionate campaign. Military historians and defense strategists are watching this conflict with a sense of profound disbelief. The United States military establishment appears to have completely ignored the brutal lessons forged in the trenches of Eastern Europe. For years, the conflict in Ukraine demonstrated exactly how the nature of modern combat had evolved. The era of the multi-million-dollar fighter jet reigning supreme has been eclipsed by the age of the $300 explosive drone. Ukrainian forces successfully utilized unmanned maritime vessels and FPV drones to systematically dismantle armored columns and sink a significant portion of the Russian Black Sea fleet. Instead of internalizing this shift and heavily investing in drone interceptor technology and base fortification, the American command structure parked billions of dollars worth of irreplaceable aviation assets on open tarmacs in the Saudi desert, leaving them completely exposed. Iran simply adopted the modern tactical playbook, transferred the technology to its regional proxies like Hezbollah and the Iraqi militias, and unleashed a swarm that the legacy American defense systems were entirely unequipped to handle. As the Pentagon scrambles to reinforce its positions and prepares to send thousands of young Marines into the teeth of a heavily entrenched enemy, the administration continues to project a narrative of total control. But the smoldering wreckage of the American air fleet at Prince Sultan Air Base tells a fundamentally different story. The United States rushed into a volatile conflict, utilizing the tactics of a bygone era, and the resulting miscalculation has permanently altered the global security landscape. We will continue to monitor the troop deployments, the fluctuating energy markets, and the impending threat to the global shipping lanes as this historic crisis continues to unfold.